Joining us now is Emily Jashinsky, host of After Party with Emily Jashinsky on MK Media. Emily, it is great to see you again. Let's start with the bill that has been written in honour of Iryna Zarutska, who is, of course, the Ukrainian refugee who was horrifically stabbed to death on a light rail in Charlotte, North Carolina. And the mainstream media really refused to cover this murder for weeks and weeks. Now, North Carolina Governor Josh Stein has signed into law Iryna's law, which includes an amendment that could allow North Carolina to resume capital punishment, including by firing squad. But Emily, the reforms will also see certain violent offenders denied cashless bail and will limit a judge's authority over pre-trial release. Now, cashless bail has become a big part of this conversation, seeing as the suspect in Iryna Zarutska's killing, DeCarlos Brown Jr., had been arrested more than a dozen times, and he was released on cashless bail just not long before this attack.
And it happens over and over again in America's cities. I mean, here in Washington, D.C., we've dealt with this for years in some extremely just unbelievably tragic cases that are so frustrating because you look at these decisions that came down during a progressive policing experiment over the course of the last 10 years where people campaigned in these cities for district attorney jobs, mayoral jobs, and others, saying that they were going to fix the inequality system, the inequalities in the system, and they were going to make policing and justice more fair. And what ended up happening actually is that the experiment played out, and we saw cases like this, not just anecdotally pop up, but as a trend, and people are completely sick of it.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrific. Now, I want to get your thoughts on this because Australia's e-safety commissioner, she's known as E-Karen here, Julie Inman-Grant, has ordered social media platforms such as X to take down posts that show the stabbing of Iryna Zarutska on that train in Charlotte. Now, there are threats of fines of $825,000 per day for each post. So there are plenty of concerns being raised about just how far Australia's e-safety commissioner is going here, if she thinks she controls the internet. And it's raised questions as to whether she's going to also censor white on black crime. And, you know, I think Australia's e-safety commissioner, in my opinion, is going way too far because also, Emily, if it wasn't for platforms such as X and this footage going viral, this story, it just would not have got the attention that it deserves.
Right. I mean, there's a much, much deeper problem here, especially in the United States, which is why do we have video of what happened with Daniel Penny, for example, with Iryna, with Charlie Kirk? And it's because people are violating the law. And so I'm not at all sort of averse to the idea that maybe we should just personally be much more careful about the social media we consume and our own health, as whether, you know, watching these videos on a doom loop is personally good for anybody psychologically. Sure. I think that's a completely valid question. But if you are in America's cities, you could walk around and see this stuff happening. Of course, what happened with Iryna was so graphic that it wasn't until people saw the video. I mean, this case is one of the better examples that people barely cared about it until the video went viral around the country. And so the video was extremely powerful.
It was, and it was people, it was conservative influencers, it was people like Charlie Kirk and Elon Musk that was sharing the video and actually making enough noise about it that finally CNN and mainstream media outlets actually started to cover it. Now, Seattle's Democratic Mayor Bruce Harrell is in the spotlight after declaring that he has no desire to put repeat criminal offenders in jail. Listen to this.
The criminal system has had a disparate impact on black and brown communities. Let me lead with that. So when this person is committing 6 or 7 crimes, I don't know his or her story. Maybe they were abused as a child. Maybe they're hungry. So my remedy is to find their life story to see how we could help first. I have no desire to put them in jail, but I need to protect you.
No desire. Yeah, he said this in a debate as he runs for re-election, and it's certainly a difficult argument to hear when we've just seen so many violent crimes being carried out by repeat offenders, just as we were speaking about recently what happened to Iryna Zarutska, who was stabbed to death by a suspect with a long history of arrests, Emily.
Well, I mean, folks like him should look at what happened with London Breed in San Francisco. They should look at the backlash in Los Angeles, in Oakland. Look what happened to Chesa Boudin. There are examples just in the last 5 years, especially post-COVID, of where even left-leaning communities, places like Seattle, have said enough. We have to stop this experiment because people are being caught as collateral in this social justice laboratory experiment that's being run by progressive mayors and district attorneys. So to say any of that, I mean, nobody is committing these crimes because they are hungry. If you walk around these cities, you see that people are committing these crimes for very sad reasons. And it's because they are addicted, and it is because they have deep mental illness problems that have gone untreated, like in the case of Iryna.
Yeah.
It's insane that that person was out on the street.
It absolutely was. And, you know, the fact that he was arrested, I think it was 14 times, was out on cashless bail. It ended so tragically. Emily, can you bring us up to speed on this US government shutdown? It's day 6 of the government shutdown, and it's estimated that this is costing taxpayers $400 million every day to pay federal employees who are not actively working. Now, the Trump administration will start mass layoffs of federal workers if Trump decides that negotiations with Democrats to end a partial government shutdown are going nowhere. What do you suspect is going to happen here?
Although Republicans see it potentially as a way to end permanent waste. They believe Russ Vought, who's the Office of Management and Budget Director and a very hardcore sort of MAGA intellectual architect, believes that the shutdown actually could be an opportunity because of certain laws that are vested in the executive branch to get rid of some federal employees permanently, to furlough federal employees. And so this period, nobody really has incentive to come to the table right now because Democrats insist on these provisions that will allow for non-citizens, or in some cases asylum seekers, and in some cases illegal immigrants, to benefit from healthcare subsidies. And on the other hand, Republicans say, okay, if you guys are insisting on that, we now have an opportunity to make some of these cuts permanent and do DOGE 2.0. So I think in the days to come, that's probably what we're going to see. Republicans are going to call Democrats bluff and say, all right, well, we are going to actually start taking a hatchet to some of your beloved parts of the government.
Okay, we'll be watching it very closely. Now, conservative journalist Nick Sauter was taken into custody in Portland during a night of chaotic protests outside an ICE facility. Now, we've been seeing the videos, the images of these wild protests night after night, and Nick Sauter was charged with disorderly conduct in the 2nd degree, and he was then released. And he released a video appearing to show that he was the one being targeted by Antifa-like thugs. This is what Caroline Levitt had to say.
Just last night, we saw an extremely troubling incident where conservative journalist Nick Sauter was captured on video being taken into custody by the Portland police after he was ambushed by Antifa and was defending himself from these assaults. But instead of arresting these violent mob members night after night after night, who are ravaging this community, the police arrested a journalist who was there trying to document the chaos, and everyone in this room should be extremely concerned about that.
Emily, it is troubling, you know, if you're a high-profile journalist. I'd love to get your thoughts on what happened to Nick. But Caroline Levitt went on to say that this incident shows a really troubling trend where left-wing mobs are trying to decide who can visit and live in their city and who can't, and also that the president is now reviewing funding for Portland, according to Caroline Levitt, saying that we will not be funding any states that allow anarchy, Emily.
Well, Antifa groups notoriously despise journalists. I know one particular journalist on the day of Donald Trump's first inauguration, when D.C. was ransacked, downtown D.C. was ransacked, but nobody remembers it, of course, because it was violence from the left. Cars were set on fire. This journalist was hit across the back of the head and had to go to hospital for taking a picture of Antifa. If you've ever covered Antifa protests that often turn into riots, you know that they coordinate particularly to block journalists from covering them. And sometimes that gets violent. So I would not be surprised at all if Sauter was merely trying to attempt to film Antifa. And they started an attack, because that's actually part of what some of them believe their obligation is to do in order to, as they see it, protect themselves and their identities from journalists, even though they're in public places and in cases like this attacking public officials or public buildings. So that is something that over the years gets very little coverage from American journalists, despite the fact that it should probably get a lot, and we should be very concerned about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it appears that Nick Sorter was just doing his job, taking a photograph. Now, a federal judge has blocked Donald Trump's efforts to deploy National Guard troops into Portland. So US District Judge Karen Immergut ruled the action as unlawful, unconstitutional, and she essentially said there's no justification for the troops being sent there. Emily, from what I can see from over here, it looks like Portland needs all the help it can get.
Yeah, Portland is one of those cities where you go to certain parts and people on the left, people who live in Portland, this happened in DC during the COVID years as well, they tend to be wealthy and affluent, would take pictures and say, Portland is wonderful. Portland doesn't need any more help. But then you go to patches of the city and it's a dystopian hellhole. And Portland is one of those cases. Now, from what I hear, it's not like it was back in 2020, 21, 2022. Even so, when you look at what happens every single day with homelessness and drugs in broad daylight in Portland, and then see their inability to contain some of these pop-up Antifa demonstrations, obviously Portland has a serious problem. And I think, whether someone agrees with the Trump administration's plan or not, Portland and Oregon Democrats, national Democrats, are missing an incredible opportunity and fueling a lot of this by not stepping in and saying, we are taking control. Maybe we don't need the president. It's the same thing in Chicago with J.B. Pritzker, but we're going to take control of our own city. Instead, they end up just attacking Trump and nothing gets done for the people of Portland.
Finally, President Trump has revealed when the UFC fight is going to be held, and it's going to take place on the South Lawn of the White House on June 14. Also happens to be his 80th birthday, and The View hosts are freaking out about this.
Sometimes you read the paper these days and it's like they're writing The Onion, like how it's and then the headlines. No, it's like really real. It's like you laugh and then you realize it's not funny and all of the things. But it's because Trump wants to host a UFC fight for his 80th birthday. That literally sounds like he's writing an SNL sketch. That's actually true, you guys.
It is true?
Yes.
At the White House.
He wants to do, my dad had an 80th birthday.
Is he participating in it?
I don't know, but who for your 80th birthday?
How many more years is that? 2 more? He'll be gone.
No, I think it's next year.
He'll be impeached.
Oh, Emily, the panic. I mean, they can't quite handle what's going on.
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that Donald Trump is hosting this on his birthday, but I also think they say this sort of panic tone of saying it's like an SNL sketch continues to show they missed the point. Yes, he is writing it like an SNL sketch to generate that reaction from you at The View. And we're 10 years into Trump's political career and they still don't get that.
Oh, they're still taking the bait. Host of After Party with Emily Jashinsky on MK Media. Emily Jashinsky, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.